'Cause junior high.
Well, good evening. We are going to go ahead and get ready to get started. Dr. Charlay is passing out kind of an outline or some paperwork for you for Brother Ed's presentation. I have the distinct honor and privilege to introduce this amazing man. So we certainly count it as a privilege. Brother Ed Gensis is an artist, poet, musician, organizer, entrepreneur, and community leader who is also directly impacted. Born and raised in Gary, Indiana, and moved to Kalamazoo, Michigan, permanently in his early 20s. His love of art, music, his passion for his people and community, and his gift of creativity are evident in all areas of his work. In October 2018, Ed Gensis released a song to accompany the campaign he was working on around school push-out, entitled Junior High, which was distributed nationwide, including on his own iHeart radio station, Spotify, and iTunes. In 2017, Ed Gensis created Poetic Justice, a monthly open mic that was hosted, led by 5 local poets. He has performed as well as hosted several events such as the Black Arts Festival, the Kalamazoo Poetry Festival, and the National Day of Racial Healing. Ed has been working as a lead mentor and head of community relations at Speak It Forward, where he teaches youth healing through music and art. In 2017, he started We Active, a community organization aimed at fighting against mass incarceration and the school to prison pipeline. The organization was recognized by the state of Michigan and presented with a special tribute by Representative John Hoadley for its work on criminal justice reform and mass incarceration in the Kalamazoo community. Ed has been a panelist and featured speaker in Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Milwaukee. He has and continues to collaborate with artists local to Kalamazoo, youth included, to create music to address social justice issues. I feel like I'm introducing the president up here, right? This is awesome. In 2018, Ed joined Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation as a racial healing practitioner under the leadership of Lana Lewis, and Ed founded Truth Talks. Ed helped to bring the conversation of root causes of gun violence to Kalamazoo and how trauma impacts gun violence through It's a Trip, Trauma Reducing Informed Practices event, and It's a Trap, Trauma Reducing Applied Practices event. Ed is on staff with Isaac as the founder and director of Blocks Club and a community organizer. Blocks Club stands for Building Leadership, Organizing Communities for Keys to Succeed, and is a grassroots approach to becoming and staying active in our respective communities. As Ed would say, this is not just another acronym, but a true way we can play an active role in revitalization and governing of our own neighborhoods. Voting rights, stop the violence awareness events, trauma awareness, entrepreneurship, community outreach, and advocacy are just a few of the things that we focus on with the Blocks Club. We welcome residents, advocates, churches, community leaders, organizations, and all to join us in the campaign to take back our neighborhoods one block at a time. As a professional music artist, Ed has had his music placed on 17 different television shows, including Forensic Files and The George Lopez Show, which are both syndicated. Ed has appeared in several television broadcasts, including BET's 106 in Park and MTV2. In addition to hosting events, Ed is dedicated to speaking and healing through resistance by telling his testimony, which also continuing to do the work. A few years ago, Brother Ed Gensis joined KVCC as an instructor to present his course, Subject to Review, a look at social justice through a hip-hop lens. We are so blessed to have Brother Ed as a part of our family. Let's welcome this amazing man.
Thank y'all very much. Thank you, Elder King. And what's funny is I told Dr. Charlay, I said I didn't need a bio. I'm cool. And I was just gonna go into it, and that was just hearing some of that was like, wow, my grandmom and my aunt though would be super proud of me. I ain't letting up. I see, yeah, I ain't stopping. So how y'all doing? Thank y'all for being here. So I got this up here. I'm gonna tell y'all something funny, right? So my youngest son is over there, Ryder. He said before we got here, he said, Dad, you know, I don't like watching the same movie twice. He said, but I'm showing up to support you and I want to see. I said, you talking about tonight, the class? I said, oh, wow. I said, but I'm switching it up, man. I said, oh, so, yeah, that's it. You can tell him my son saying stuff like that. But I am switching it up because I am honored and blessed to be able to teach this class at KVCC. For those that don't know, and this is very important, outside of the bio and things like that, I have 3 felonies that I will be getting expunged soon. But in the interim, I currently have 3 felonies. My last felony was I was actually arrested in my history class at KVCC some years ago. My current wife, Patrice, former Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin, we were in class together, and she actually wasn't there that day. I was, and I saw the police when they came, and I was like, And it was, to me, like full circle, because it was exactly how I got escorted out of school when I was in Gary, Indiana, for taking a gun to school, and when the police showed up, I knew who they were there for. Fast forward, mentoring, organizing, doing my music, continuing, and I was at Millwood and Dr. Washington from KVCC, Kalamazoo Valley Community College. He was there, he heard my story, mixed in with the testimony, and was like, wow, you have something to say. If you can make that into a curriculum, I'll give you your own course. And I got on it, did my curriculum. 2 years later, I'm currently at KVCC, in addition to all the other things that I do, teaching my own curriculum, social justice through a hip hop lens. So I'm gonna give y'all a glimpse of what that is tonight. You don't have to be hip hop fans, and I'm not trying to turn y'all into hip hop fans. But we have to talk about some of the real things. So what I have up here is called La Perla. I just got back from Puerto Rico. And if anybody knows anything about me, I'm not just a casual, I'm glad I'm in another place, great. So while I'm there, I'm talking to the locals, I'm talking to the people. So 3 things I want to lift up before we start, because this goes right into what I'm saying. One is Puerto Rico was made a part of the United States. Y'all know that, right? So you don't need a passport to go. They are not allowed to vote. Okay, so they don't like that. And I don't think it's cool either. Also, Puerto Rico was purchased, which is weird to even hear. How can a place be purchased? And it was purchased by the United States years ago, which is also why we have a U.S. Virgin Islands and then a British Virgin Islands, because they were able to buy that and United States was able to buy that. La Perla looks beautiful. Can y'all see the houses? Looks real beautiful, right? So I want to give y'all a little backdrop what I learned from the locals. Out of all the places that we went, this is one of the places we didn't go, but I can't wait to go back to. La Perla has a very, very, very bad It is LAPE. If y'all got notebooks, right, or papers, you should write this down if you don't know, because this is one of the important things. LA dash, not dash, it's a space. PERLA. The significance about this place that I found out, besides its beauty, it looks beautiful. However, if you were to walk through there, this is the one place that they say don't be caught out there at night. And so I kept wondering why. And so I started asking people, and I got the history behind it. So the deep part is, can y'all see this wall right here? So back in the day, this part is Old San Juan up here, which is also the oldest city in the United States. Can you imagine that? And they can't vote. The oldest city in the United States is in Old San Juan, Puerto Rico, and their citizens cannot vote. That's a whole other thing. But back in the day, they had people that cut up the animals for food, furs, things like that. So as they found out that some of these things brought on sickness, they had everybody be in a lower part, which was called La Perla. As Old San Juan was being built up, i.e. bought by colonizers, they put a wall up to separate La Perla from Old San Juan. Gentrification, so on and so forth, we've seen it before. Now here's the dope part though, and what I'm about to go into. La Perla operated as a subculture. And so they said, well, since we've been ostracized from the rest of the community, we'll just be our own. They sent the National Guard twice to try to take over La Perla. The National Guard lost twice. They were outmanned, outgunned, and out-strategized. La Perla is its own, I just got chills. La Perla is its own thing out there. They welcome tourists and outsiders. They don't like to be photographed without, they don't want to be ridiculed or made like they're in a zoo. However, they do understand the history. Trump saw, because y'all see it sits on the ocean like that, it's dope. Trump said, oh, well, I'll buy it and put some hotels out there. That didn't work. So I wanted to start with that because I said you could see something beautiful, and the beauty in that to me were the people who said we will band together, stand together, and we will not be gentrified, pushed out, or overran because they saw what happened to everything outside of them. So with that, first thing I want to say is consciousness. And I'm gonna read the definition. Consciousness is the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. The late, great James Baldwin, who was a writer, activist, and just an amazing, dope human being, said, to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious, that's just a little bit of conscious, is to be enraged almost all the time. Just a little bit of conscious is to be enraged almost all the time. That was in the 60s when he said that. 20 plus years later, by way of hip hop, we saw the emergence of a group called NWA, which stands for Niggas with Attitudes. The media deemed them as gangster rap, when in reality, this was a variation of what James Baldwin had already said 20 plus years ago, that just to be relatively conscious in this country as a black person is to be enraged almost all the time. With that, I want to go into the thing. I think I can do it. No.
Are you trying to go to the next picture?
The thing. Help. Escape. I just saw it. Okay. I hit escape because this is it won't be watered down, but it is a little more condensed than what I do. But it will not be watered down, I promise y'all. So what I wanted to start out with was talking about exactly what hip hop is. But before going into that, I want to say, y'all see this picture, and I'm gonna say what this picture is. Negro spirituals. Spirituals are known as Negro spirituals, or spiritual music is a genre of music, Christian music, that is purely and solely the creation of generations of Black Americans, which merged African cultural heritage with the experience of being held in bondage and slavery. At first during the transatlantic slave trade, the largest and the most humane forced migration in recorded human history, and for centuries afterwards. Hip hop, also known as rap music, is the bastard child of blues, jazz that was raised by gospel. Now this is something that I came up with. So the late great Gil Scott-Heron, who made The Revolution Will Not Be Televised and is credited for being one of the 4 founders of hip hop, he considered himself a bluesologist. And he said that is a scientist that is concerned with the origin of the blues. I am a hip hopologist. I am a scientist concerned with the origins of hip hop. And I've dedicated a lot of time to figuring out what is this thing that helped save me and a lot of people that I know. And then also so polarizing at times that when you say, do you listen to rap? It's like, no way I listen to rap. And it's like, wow, what is that? Like, what happened in your life that hip hop became that offensive? And I get it because I've seen some of it on my own, but that's one of the things that I want to discuss. So as an organizer, I attended a training, and in that training, let me freeze. Hold on before I go to that, because I want to, what happened? That's the consciousness of the enslaved people saying, let's wade in the water, and they made songs like Follow the Drinking Gourd, and they dropped messages. They just weren't singing about the suffering or what they were going through. They were also plotting, because to be conscious is not to just sit and rage in the corner, but oftentimes rage leads to healing through resistance. And how can we push back? How can we fight back? So fast forward, we got civil rights. Civil rights are an essential component of democracy that guarantees of equal social opportunities and protection under the law, regardless of race, religion, and other characteristics. However, Black Americans had to fight for these basic human rights. This sets the playing field already. When a person feels like they have to fight for it, even when you get it, you can either over-celebrate it or underappreciate it sometimes. And sometimes I'm still kind of up in the air because I know people that's like, we got the right to do all of these different things. But I'm reminded of Idlewild, Michigan. Anybody familiar with Idlewild, Michigan? Raise your hand if you know about it. I was blown away the first time I went. It was the first ever Black resort, all Black, before civil rights, before we had to fight for these rights. After integration, and it's on there, I shared it with Dr. Charlay, it is literally on their historical plaque when you go into the city, that after civil rights and integration was cool, they had Black flight. This is like the first time in history you had heard of this. So white flight speaks of when white people thought that well, not thought, they knew that their houses and things like that, the prices of their houses and neighborhoods would go down as Black people moved into the neighborhood. So they had redlining and a lot of other gross racist things that happened. So they had white flight. So white flight is when, there's an exact definition, so I'm paraphrasing, but it's multiple white people leave at one time. This devastates the economy, It does a lot of things, but it's literally considered white flight. Black flight was the first time it happened in Idlewild, and it was after civil rights. So even though we did get our basic human rights, some people thought the basic human rights were being equal to white people. So it was about equality, not necessarily equity, if that makes sense. So these are just different pictures that we have from the civil rights. So man, y'all know who this is, the late great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Does anybody know who this guy is? Nobody at all? And it's cool if you don't, because that's why I'm doing the class. That's the dope part. So this man here is named Reverend James Bevel. He is credited by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with initiating the Children's Crusade during the Birmingham campaign of 1963. James Bevel emerged as a civil rights leader from the ranks of Nashville, Tennessee student movement. He was at King's side during many of the major campaigns of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, and was at the Lorraine Motel at the time of King's assassination in '68. He moved to Alabama in '63 and played leading roles along with Dorothy Cotton, Andrew Young, Bernard Lee, Fred Shuttlesworth, and the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. Now here's what he did that's dope. That's just a little backdrop. What he did was our ancestors, black people that fought, and not just black people, it was a lot of people out on the front lines that agreed that this was wrong. But they were all going to jail and getting beat in the head and beat up and hosed and dog sicked on them 10 plus years. I had no idea about this either, that the civil rights movement went on for 10 plus years of just straight incarceration, beat downs, the Bloody Sunday as they had, and the different things like that. This guy, Reverend James Bevel, had an idea to activate the kids. So he got with a DJ, Shelly the Playboy Stewart, and it was a few other ones, but it was Tall Paul Dudley, and they contacted the radios to play certain songs for the youth to get more active. See, his idea was they will keep locking us up and keep beating us in the head. But if we send the youth out there, America has to see what they're doing. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at first disagreed vehemently. We can't do this to the kids because the people that are opposed against us have no hearts, no conscience. They will sick the dogs. Mr. James Bevel said, I know it. But that's what we need America to see. Similar to how they did Vietnam. When America was made conscious of what was really going on, this is what stopped the war. But it was the graphic pictures and the things like that. So Shelly Stewart, Paul Wall, Tall Paul Dudley, they would play songs like Shake, Rattle, and Roll, which was by an artist named Joe Turner, that meant it was time to turn up. Young people were reported to have told their teachers it's time to go and even jumped out of windows when these songs came on and they showed up. Now this was mind-blowing to me too. So when I was young, I would see these pictures, and because I was so young, I thought these were adults. Do y'all remember ever seeing these pictures? These are high school students. These are high school students that they did this to, that they sicked the dogs on, that they arrested. The youngest one that they arrested during this time was a 4-year-old, actually, that the cuffs couldn't even fit on. And they asked him, what is he out there doing? He said, the revolution. And I thought that was dope. I thought that was dope. And he knew something. But these were high school kids that they did this to. So to fast forward the same way I said about the late, great James Baldwin saying what he said and then it going all the way up into NWA is the same way we saw things like this right here. That was the emergence of young people organizing. So we had the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, which was out of Oakland, California. They were in college. Huey P. Newton and Brother Bobby Seale. They both were in college at the time and said we need to do something to ensure that we're no longer brutalized. At the same time, closer to home, we had the conservative vice lords in Chicago, which started in Lawndale, Illinois, in a juvenile home. And these guys said, we need to do something to protect our communities. The deep part about that is, me growing up in Gary, Indiana, I grew up knowing nothing about but the vice lords. Vice lords, gangster disciples, folks, what they call them, BDs, GDs, Latin kings, and all of these were called gangs. In Gary, I didn't see the parks department. I saw the vice lords hang nets at the court, clean up glass on the court, tell us not to bust glass. So my life, I wanted to be a vice lord. I couldn't wait. How do I get in? Like, to me, it was like the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. In because I want to make sure I got this right. In 1970, Alfonso Alfred and Bobby Gore applied for $275,000 from the Rockefeller Foundation and were approved in Chicago, which started in the juvenile home. $275,000 back then. If y'all do the math, the inflation and all that, that's a lot of money right now. But we also have something else called COINTELPRO. Is anybody familiar with that? It's a counterintelligence program. And this was designed for what they consider black radicals. So any young people who were emerging as leaders, they infiltrated the organizations. And so subsequently, this is called, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense right now is called a militant, radical, I've heard it be called racist. Not that they started the breakfast program that the government hijacked and now uses, or the education that they offered, or the fact that they even told black men around the world, you can stand up for yourselves. The conservative vice lords was splintered, fractured, and is now called a gang, and you can be indicted for just being affiliated under the RICO Act or a bunch of other things. But on February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X, AKA Brother El Haji Malik El Shabazz, was assassinated at the Audubon Ballroom in Washington Heights section of New York as he was preparing to give a speech. On April 4th, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot dead while standing on the balcony outside his second room at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. And in 1969, Fred Hampton, who was the leader of the Chicago branch of the Black Panthers, was drugged, shot, and killed in his bed while he lay next to his pregnant fiancee during a pre-dawn raid in a Chicago apartment by a tactical unit of the Cook County State's Attorney Office. Bobby Gore, who applied for the grant for the CVL, was convicted of murder and sent to prison for over 10 years. 1973, Larry Hoover, who started what is now known as Growth and Development, but then it was called the Gangster Disciples of Chicago, was convicted for allegedly ordering the killing of a supposed rival. He was sentenced to 150 to 200 years. He is currently still incarcerated without no proof. The first time I heard the term political prisoner was actually being taught about him and a guy named Jeff Ford, who had conversation. He started the Black Keystone Rangers in Chicago. This is not a gang thing. I'm not trying to tell y'all about I learned a lot about gangs tonight, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the things that the young men were trying to do, and then it got perverted and turned into something else, because that's hip hop, and why hip hop can be so taboo sometimes. Because there is a Will Smith, there is a Kid and Play, there is a MC Lyte, a Queen Latifah, but if all you know is Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, and Sexy Red, then you'll say, I don't want my daughter to listen to hip hop, and I definitely don't want her to be a hip hop artist. This is not to demonize none of the names that I named. I went to school with everybody I just named. And the Queen Latifahs didn't even like me in high school. So, because they thought I was one of the ones. But as we grow and we mature and we learn not to other people or to ostracize, then the communication comes up of, well, what are we really talking about, and what were these young men talking about before it turned into gangbanging? This is just some of the things that conservative vice lords did in Chicago, and so they had a Teen Town, they had a Tasty Freeze, an ice cream shop, they had hair care products that they teamed up with Sammy Davis Jr. to distribute and put out, an African shop where they served, had African medallions and dashikis and things like that. Scott here. Anybody know who this guy is? His name up there, but do you really know? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Well, yeah, DJ Kool Herc. First guy to he's the godfather of hip hop right here. But the dope part, again, going back to the youth, is his little sister was 13 years old, little Cindy Campbell, and she asked her older brother, can we throw a party for back to school? And she charged the young ladies 50 cents and charged the young men a quarter. This is the original flyer that she made on an index card. And even though her brother was the oldest one and was credited with birthing hip hop, DJ Kool Herc, it was actually young Cindy Campbell who had the idea at 13 years old of just doing what she knew to do in her community. And they plugged in, they used the electricity from the park. This was on Sedgwick and Cedar Ave, and hip hop just turned 51 on Sunday. So, there you go. Yeah, that's right. That's 51 years old, and it's now the biggest genre of music. But, so that's what I wanted to get to. So when I caught on to hip hop, I heard a song called The Message. And on The Message, they said it's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. And in the first part of the song, they say broken glass everywhere. People pissing on the stairs, you know, they just don't care. And I'll never forget hearing that. And I lived my whole life just as hip hop being a soundtrack and me identifying with different things and saying, well, this reminds me of what my grandmama told me about the Negro spirituals, which gave birth to gospel, which gave birth to blues, which gave birth to jazz, which ultimately gave birth to hip hop. And that is, we always have to say our own stories, and sadly, we have to put it in music. There was not, Chris Rock has a show. It's an old comedy show. It's Bigger and Blacker. I believe that's it. It's like early 2000s. He has a joke on there where he talks about we won't have a black president. This was the mind state once upon a time. So what we thought and what we allowed a lot of times was, well, at least we have this voice. Anybody know about the Gap Band? Yeah, you heard of the Gap Band? You dropped the bomb on me? Okay, that's one of their biggest hits. Anybody know about the Oklahoma Massacre and Black Wall Street? Okay, so the dope part about the Gap Band is Greenwood, Pine, and Archer, or Greenwood, Archer, Pine, spells out Gap, and that's their hood, that's their community. And then you drop the bomb on me, even though they're talking about a beautiful lady like you. Wow, you dropped the bomb on me. I can't believe you just got me thinking about you all day. It was also a subliminal message of the first time that America bombed their own. And so it's about those riots, because sometimes we have to sneak the messages in, like follow the drinking gourd. And when I found out that, that was so powerful. And I thought about this, and when I was organizing, I also learned about this. Anybody heard about the broken windows theory? So, two scientists, she said, yeah. So cute. The broken windows theory suggests that policing methods that target minor crimes such as vandalism, loitering, public drinking, jaywalking, and fare evasion help to create an atmosphere of order and lawfulness. I remember scratching my head and saying, okay, explain that. And so the guy was explaining, he said, well, the theory was if they park a car with a broken window in a poverty-stricken community, within an hour the car would be vandalized. And I was like, well, duh. Like, what, yeah, like what is that? That's like going to the worst place you can possibly imagine and say, I'm gonna just drop my wallet and see what people do. I can tell you what they're gonna do. We don't even have to go through that. They're gonna pick the wallet up. And you lucky if you get your license back. Because they might take that these days, you know, yeah. So to me that was insane. But as I was in this training, the only thing I can think about was they called this the broken windows theory. This came out the same exact year as Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 said, broken glass everywhere, people pissing on the stairs, you know, they just don't care. They just don't care. They not just talking about the people that live there that's doing this, they're saying the people that eat, they don't even see us. But when they do see us, they criminalize it. So places like St. Louis, you cannot wear, I'll even say, I'll start with me. Gary, Indiana, we couldn't wear earrings or hats to school because of the gang stuff. I hated it. Can't wear hats to the club, can't wear earrings to school. They had corporal punishment, so you get hit with the paddles if you do wear earrings or something, so if you do come to school with it on. St. Louis, you cannot wear a do-rag in the mall. In public malls, men cannot wear do-rags because of, they identify it as gang, whatever. Kalamazoo, they put up no parking, no stopping, no standing signs on the north side to combat drug sales. However, the sign stayed up for 20 plus years and was used to stop and frisk. I was charged with attempted possession because an officer saw me park as me and my wife were moving. The car parked over the sidewalk. The trunk is ajar. We're literally putting stuff in the car, but he said, I smell cannabis. I smell weed. And so, because you don't have anything on you, I'm charging you with attempted possession. I had to plead no contest. This was before I learned how to organize. And the judge, Judge Bridenstine, he had never heard of that. Officer Willie Moore, he's the one that did that to me. He's since then apologized and we talked, but he did it. And he's a black man. He's a black man too, and he, whatever. But once I learned what equity was, and it was shortly after this class of learning how they criminalize things that's in our culture, i.e. I took it back to, they didn't just abolish slavery. Not only did they make the loophole to say everybody in here could be a slave now because of the 13th Amendment, which means that slavery is abolished except for if you go to jail, Elder King, then now you can be a slave now. And it's in there, it's in the writing. The other deep part about that blew my mind with that was the Jim Crow era. So, we can't have them in slavery no more. We'll criminalize everything then. And almost everything you can imagine. You couldn't look at a white man in his eyes. It's not my era, so I told my great aunt all the time, like, I'm pretty sure I'd have went to jail or got killed back then because my attitude is just a little different. But then I also don't know, because if you grow up a certain type of way and you're told a certain type of thing, you don't know. The only thing that makes me think like that is hip hop. or places like La Perla, which is why I wanted to start off like that. There is a such thing in America where people say no more, and we will heal through resistance. And that's why I always think about hip hop, which started as what they said was just a fad, now is the biggest genre of music. I like to ask this in the class, especially when there's a lot of faces that I think might not know this. So anybody know who Pusha T is or the Clips? I love to ask this question. Raise your hand if you heard of Pusha T or the Clips. Okay, so the Clips was signed to Pharrell Williams out of Virginia. Norfolk, Virginia is actually where they're from. Norfolk is similar to a lot of other poverty-stricken places. Pusha T has made his career on rapping about the things that he knew about, which was selling cocaine. Is what he did, is what him and his brother did. His brother, so it was Pusha T and Malice. Malice was the older brother. Malice literally dropped out of the hip-hop game because he said we're doing too much destruction to our own people. And he turned his life over to God and now calls himself No Malice. Pusha T kept with it. He's the little brother. He's like, I'm staying with it. This needs to be said. I'm saying it exactly like this. I love that about him. But one of the things, the reason why I bring him up is because you may have never heard of that, but how many of you heard of Ba-da-ba-ba, I'm loving it, the McDonald's commercial? That's Pusha T. When Pharrell Williams, who's super duper producer, got an opportunity to do something for McDonald's, he took it to a creative guy that he knows that may have been ostracized or just put to the side and say, hey, he sell dope. He's from Norfolk, Virginia. Man, come on, man. Pharrell said, I see something else in him, and if given an opportunity, he can do this. So he wrote the jingle, they gave it to Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake promoted it for about a year. It's now one of the biggest campaigns. Now here's the dope, exciting part. Boom, 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 we have the meats. Y'all know about the Arby commercial? Pusha T. Same dude, two rival burger things. And every time the commercial plays, he gets paid. And this is something that he could be proud of, to say, I rose beyond what they gave me. And yes, once upon a time I did sell this and did this, but I had to rise out of it. And I think about that when I think about chitlins. I don't eat chitlins, and I ain't judging nobody that does. But when there came a time when they threw out everything that was not desired, I won't even say inedible because it is edible, it's just nasty. No disrespect to anybody who eat them. I don't eat them. But once it was discarded, it's now become a delicacy. $40, $50 a bucket, especially during the holidays. We have a way, and when I say we, culturally, anybody that's been oppressed has a way of coming out of it. Sadly, historically, we know that that doesn't happen just all the time. So we can't just say, oh, it'll be all right, you'll get, you know, like they say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or like the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, what happens if you don't have the bootstraps? And that's that meritocracy. So I'm not suggesting that every time a group of people or race of people or whoever is oppressed that they just automatically rise out of it. But I am very proud when I see it, and it's very reminiscent to me of not only the struggles that I've heard all throughout school, because they ram that down your throat. You know you come from slaves, you know y'all had to fight for this, you know, oh, look at Jesse Jackson, oh, look at, and everything is so dissected to where you lose sight of, well, I guess Michael Jordan is the biggest person, and so people kill over shoes. Or I guess Tupac is the biggest, and then everybody just follows that. But they miss some of the, what did I do to become this, because they told me the same messaging. Excuse me. So we had something in hip hop that started called B-boys. These was just the breaking boys or the breaking girls. Y'all see breakdancing made it to the Olympics. Big stuff going on, big stuff going
It
on.
was a socialist, they said it was a socialist railroad actually. She said it was
I wouldn't be surprised. Don't get me started, don't get me started on that, I wouldn't be surprised.
she said it was a socialist.
But
That's about right.
when we showed up, or when back in the day when they showed up, after you finished breakdancing, they would strike a pose. A lot of people would dress similarly. They would have on track suits, similar things. This guy, because you got the broken windows theory, this became criminalized. This looks like loitering. It's not a posse to us, it looks like a gang. And now you got that. Now, the bad part is sometimes we take on some of that because without the B-boys, we wouldn't have what they call Bad Boys Records. B-boy wasn't bad boy. Hip hop became that. Hip hop was a way out, and it was, you had the message, but you also had Sugar Hill Delight, a hip, a hop, a hip. It was more party, dance, and something that you could dance to. But then we also realized we had a voice. And when you have a voice, you can't just dance all the time. When your mama's saying, you've been out there dancing all day and out there with your friends and we gotta pay rent. And different. And when crack hit in the 80s, that devastated a lot of different things. Also hip hop. And we have what they call continued consciousness. So you have Public Enemy, the clocks. Public Enemy wore the clocks and they say, we know what time it is. I had one of them clocks in junior high. They had the African medallions. I wore them too. But I never bought an African medallion from a black store owner. I didn't even know that was a thing. Not growing up in here. And then we learned about, so we got the crack, we got police, we got the guns. And then Tipper Gore said, put the stickers on the album. She fought for parental advisory. And the biggest people to get hit with that, even though heavy metal was cussing at that time and saying a lot of things, hip hop was blowing up. And so we got the boys in the hood, and I see the little ones in here, so I ain't gonna say it how I usually say it, but the boys in the hood are always hard. Come talking that trash, we'll pull your card. Knowing nothing in life but to be legit. Don't quote me, boy, because I ain't said, That's Easy-E. That's from back in the day, if nobody knows that. And I like to break this part down because this is what we, in neighborhoods, from hip hop, once we got out of, it's cool to dance, it's cool to have the funny haircuts and all of that, but honestly, we are brutalized by police. We are watched when we walk in stores. Don't matter what your social economic background and so on and so forth. And so you say the boys in the hood are always hard. We are always on edge. Super serious. Can't smile. Joke too much, they take that as a weakness. You come talking that trash, we'll pull your card. So if you come here saying, I'm hard too, well, I want to see how hard you are. Because that's what the boys in the hood gonna do. They gonna pull your card. They want to see how tough you really are. Knowing nothing in life but to be legit. I don't know nothing else but to be real. Don't talk to the police, I'm real. I didn't graduate, I'm real. Yeah, I sell dope all day, I'm keeping it real. Don't even know what keeping it real is. We just know to be legit. But don't quote me, because I ain't said nothing. Everything I'm saying, I'm repeating. This was some of the most powerful words that Ice Cube wrote for Eazy-E, and it described a whole generation of what we were really dealing with. And fast forward, before they made the song F the Police, from 1980 to 2018, more than 30,000 people have died by police violence in the United States, according to a 2021 article published in The Lancet. And that was, of course, before some of the other atrocities we continue to see. NWA. This is voted, the F the Police is considered a protest song and is one of the top 100 American protest songs because somebody had to say it. My father was killed when I was 2 years old by off-duty police officers of the Gary, Indiana Police Department with non-registered police guns, and nobody went to jail for it. And they were black. So it's not a race thing as much as it is systemic. Mass incarceration, of course. For those who don't know, I'm gonna just say this, America makes up 5% of the nation's population, but makes up an alarming 26% of incarcerated people worldwide. I like to ask the youth when I'm at school, if I give you a nickel, can you give me 26 cents back out of that? And the looks on their faces all the time is like, how? And I'm like, yeah, how can you over-incarcerate if we only make up 5% of the nation's population? That's because they over-incarcerate. So it's not just me going to jail. Toby, they'll take you to jail too. And it could be for a civil infraction, it could be for the smallest things. And for those who don't know, law enforcement started off as slave catchers. And that is, it links directly with the Jim Crow era type of things and how they criminalize a lot of different things. We also have a sadness, which is 51%. I'm gonna make sure I'm not paraphrasing this either, because this is super sad. Of rap artists, regardless of socioeconomic background, since 2018, die of gun violence, no matter their stature in hip hop. So that says something about the mind state. So somewhere along the way, we healed through resistance enough to talk about our conditions, what we were going through, organized enough to make it out, but didn't change the mindset. So the mindset came into glorifying misogyny, gang violence, poverty, and it goes back to the chitlins. In the 50s, 60s, they had what they called the chitlin circuit, which black artists who couldn't perform on the radio and stuff like that because they called it race music, they had to make up their own places to do things, and they would go on tour, and they called it the chitlin circuit. And what's dope about that is, again, they created something when the world, America, did not give them opportunities. When you flip it and you say, I don't know if I want to be regarded as, because if we flip that and fast forward it now, then we can't say it's bad if they have the Chronic tour, or it's bad if they have the Molly tour, or whatever society said was, well, this is nasty, but then you turn it into something good. They think they're doing something good, and in essence, we can't judge. So there was some good that came out of the chitlin circuit. What I wish that really came out of it was that the chitlin circuit right now ran black music into where it was a real chitlin circuit and not just something that they had to do in the interim. Because once everything crossed back over and they were allowed to come over here, then we saw people like Whitney Houston, who doesn't do hip hop music, but if you saw the bathroom photos before she died, it was a mess. And she also didn't make a lot of money. It just looked like how it looked. Or we think about artists like Sam Cooke, which there's so much mess behind his whole thing. And we say anybody 20 plus years, that's the new Sam Cooke, the new Aretha Franklin, the new whoever. They have a different mind state of saying, I'm not going through what they went through. That works up into an extent. So we do see people like Jay-Z who said, I'm overcharging for what y'all did to the Cold Crush. He intently said, I'm I'm gonna do to the rap game what y'all should have gave people like Slick Rick, KRS-One, and some of the four founders. However, even with that, there's a mixture of mixed messages going to the youth of what they receive. They don't know how to fit in sometimes because everything that you're saying, Jay-Z, Beyonce, sounds good. But I go to this school and I live in Fox Ridge Apartments and the buses don't pull out there to come pick me up. I'm in a place where the age of reason is 7 years old. That's Kalamazoo. The age of reason, Michigan, the age of reason is 7. In Kalamazoo, they have what they call the Student Policy Act, which mandates the sharing of students' information between the judges, the courts, police, and the jails. And that's been implemented since 2000. I gotta shut up. So, with all of that, what I said, like I said, this class wasn't about going down a list of people, listen to this person, don't listen to this person, or be a little softer on hip hop. It's really talking about the dichotomy of America and the fact that sometimes as you fight to come out of it, which is full of obstacles, and that's for everybody in the room because that's what they do. You know, capitalism, racism, it will oppress us all one way or another. But when we come out of it, it's what is the song or what's being said? What is your flight song, so to speak? And so when I think back, once I got the opportunity to learn about the late, great James Baldwin, I said, this is why Ice Cube frowned in all of his pictures. This is why they called their group NWA. This is why I have felt angry a lot of my life. It's not a pass to say whatever I want to say in hip hop, but it's also should not be an automatic get judged by society and saying, he's just a rapper, he just listen to him. Lastly, I'll just say this. I was in a room with some teachers and some students. It was only like 3 students, it was more teachers. And this was a few years ago, so they was talking about the book, The Hate That You Give. Y'all know about the book, they made it into a movie. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, the hate that you give, the hate that you give. That was Tupac. And I said, yeah, anybody know where this come from? And none of the teachers or the principals in the room knew. It was only the young lady, one of the young students was like, that's Tupac. And I was like, yeah, so the teacher's looking like, what? And I said he had Thug Life tattooed on his stomach. But society saw him as saying Thug Life. But everybody who took the time to listen, he said, the hate you give. The hate you give. Y'all know the rest of the part? There you go. That's the life part. That's the life part. The hate you give. Little infants, F's everybody. Because when the youngsters grow up, and if all they listening to is the teacher not taking the time, but this rapper just explained my feeling. I'm listening to the rapper then. I grew up without a father, so hip hop helped raise me. So all of the men that, if they said do this, it sound right, I at least try it. Until the older guys on the block said, hey, you can't be listening to everything you hear in the song or just copying, you know, you can't do that. But in the meanwhile, you think so. So that's the class. That's subject to review. I do gotta say this, was where did that come from? They put me on 3 years felony probation and they said, this subject to review. And I said, what is that? And the woman said, when you're done with your 3 years of felony probation, we will go back and look at your record and see how you did on probation and find out if we should send you to prison or let you off probation. And I was like, what? And I was like, so I'm subject to review, but the schools I went to, how y'all did me when I came to Kalamazoo, whooped me and charged me at 17 with my first felony, none of that is subject to review, but I am. And so I called the class subject to review, a look at social justice through a hip hop lens. Like, Yeah, so that's where it came from, and it's like, what if we look at social justice, but what if we looked at it through a guy that raps? And I'm saying, you ever thought about this? Or you ever thought about where this crime comes from, or why they criminalize this? And a lot of times it's the more rights, the people that they don't think are supposed to have rights, get rights, criminalize it. And with that, thank y'all very much. I was supposed to ask y'all questions. Am I too late for the questions? So if anybody got some questions, all right, thank you.
And all he represents, what did you think about that?
You know what I love about Snoop, whether it's him at the Olympics or him wearing what he wore at the Super Bowl, Snoop Dogg is the epitome of a person that comes from Long Beach, California is full of what they call Crips. It's all he ever knew. I've been to Long Beach. It's very difficult to grow up in a neighborhood like that and not be affiliated with anything. The fact that he was able to take his neighborhood to the mainstream, I love it every time I see him. He is the most marketable hip hop artist. He can sell anything. And I love it because he comes from humble beginnings. And his father was a mailman in Detroit. I don't know if y'all knew that, but Snoop Dogg's father was a mailman in Detroit. Yeah.
I started not saying anything, but you have inspired me.
Thank you.
Being raised in the rural South, not just the South, you got to put the rural in there, where there was a lot of uneducated, people that raised people like myself in the 50s and the 60s. When I moved to Michigan, people don't know this, my first job was at the Sheriff's Department, and I remember I still have copies of my evaluation, because I was trained to not look people in the eye. Didn't even realize it until I started getting these evaluations that said I was unsociable, couldn't relate to people. And I told the sergeant, I was like, what are you talking about? I don't even, it's not like that. And then by me being quiet or not like a verbal person, and I wasn't like gossipy either, but so they looked at me like I was a problem, but I really wasn't, because years later the inmates remembered me. They always remembered something good about something I said or what I did, but my evaluations would have looked as if, she don't look in the eye when you talk to her. Like you said, it was based on judgment is what I'm getting at. And that stuck with me for a long time. And it took me a long time to get past it, because it's still hard for me to look people in the eye.
What's the, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I heard, she just made me think about that. Y'all know what that is? That's, the first time when I found out, and I show this to the youth, and I say, you see what that is? That's the equivalent of when you say, like, what's taught culturally. The biggest Black Arts Fest that they had would be at Bronson Park when I first moved here, and we all would meal around that, and people took pictures in front of it, and nobody even knew what that was. And it just makes me wonder sometimes, the people that do know what they were teaching for you to not look at somebody in the eye, did that work? And it makes me wonder, like, the people that may have knew, like, they don't even know. They think they having fun and they just down here celebrating, they don't even know. Because it got to do something to your subconscious the same way years later. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask, you said something about the clocks. What was the significance of the clocks and time?
Oh, so Public Enemy wore their shower clocks. They would, so y'all know they shower clocks. That's what they were. back in the day, they used to have these clocks that you could have in the shower, which was weird, but they would hang on a rope, and they popularized them by wearing them around their necks.
Okay.
And saying we know what time it is, like we are not asleep. So Public Enemy are some of the conscious artists that actually said fight the power.
Sure.
Yeah, they talked about being proactive and being mindful of what's going on. And so they wore the clocks around their neck to represent that. Yeah.
Mine is a question about urban street scene in terms of graffiti.
Yes.
Does graffiti represent hip hop? Because I've seen somewhere where people do graffiti and it has a message that not everyone can decode it.
Yes.
So that's what I wanted to.
Yes, four main elements of hip hop. Great question. DJing, because that started. DJ Kool Herc. MCing, because somebody finally got the mic like me and was like, yes, yes, y'all. Graffiti and breakdancing. Those are the four major elements, and there are more that were added, but the four major elements. Graffiti was actually. That's such a great question, because graffiti was actually one of the first things out of hip hop that was criminalized. The first thing of them spray painting on the trains and the buildings and the things like that. It was, what did they call it? Just no, but that was what the people called it. The police deemed it as defacing property. Defacing property, yeah. And then it became a felony after a while too if you got caught as a tag. If you got labeled as a tagger, you could have that's about bad as being a gangbanger in New York in the 80s. Yeah.
Protect their property.
Protect that property. Capitalism at its finest. At its finest. Even though some of it was beautiful and might have brought more people, it's not what they wanted. So get that out of here. But we can have that though. As long as you don't draw it on the side of the wall, you can. There you go. And,
Was there a time when graffiti was used by gangs to the boundaries to put where they
yes,
their
sir.
area? They put graffiti up
Yes, sir.
to.
That's how I knew where not to go and where to go in Gary, Indiana, and Chicago. When I went, if Kathy was here, she would remember the first time I went with her, because we share our oldest son together. Me seeing what they call the writing on the wall, which was the graffiti, was how I knew where we were at, and I'm like, wow, y'all got me somewhere a little unsafe. But I was cool though, it was cool. It was cool.
Also, you talked about chitlins. They're good.
I'm not discriminating, sir. I don't mess around with that.
You put a lot of hot.
I believe you. I take your word for it.
But you gotta get rid of. You gotta get past the smell.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, sir. That was the good one.
Who has the other mic? No, it was just rubbing against.
That was me that did that, I think. Oh, wasn't me? Was it? No, because it's doing it now, and I'm standing right here. All right.
I was just going to say thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. This is a great audience.
Is this a video that will be something we could share with others?
I don't know if he videoed it. Did you? You gotta let me see it before you. But
So check, mic check.
Mike, check.
I know all these things that he's saying, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes I forget And every time he tell me, it's like sharpening the pencil again. I just sharpen that pencil, and I remember. So good looking, sharpening that pencil.
Thank you, cuz. Appreciate it. Thank you. That's what's up. Thank you. I also want to say to the audience, to me, this is a perfect, okay, thank you. To me, this is a perfect audience. And when I talk with Dr. Charlotte, one of the things that I was very for real about, because we do a lot of different trainings, I had a pushback at one of the trainings that we had where we were talking about like black history and things like that. And I was like, well, where are the white people at? I was like, because they need to hear some of the stuff that we hear and how we process it. Not just hearing the information, but how we processed it when we heard it. To me, this is like the perfect audience, especially because I know it's real. And so thank you for even lifting that up. But that's, to me, I consciously thought of that. I think it's great. I think it's great, yeah. I appreciate y'all even sitting here listening to me talk about what I'm talking about. Because y'all, some of y'all probably had no idea of what is this, what is he talking about? Social justice through a hip hop lens, like what? But that's how I got it in the organizing class. And I was like, I had no idea there was a correlation between the two. And I've been rapping since I was like 7 years old. I'm now 49, and I've been able to do some successful things, but the most successful I've been able to do, to me, is being able to give back and talk to the youth and saying, did you know, not only you can make money off this, you don't have to quote unquote sell your soul to do it. You don't have to do this and perpetuate. So yeah, thank y'all again.
I'll just yell.
No.
So, as you were talking about some of the lyrics, it was like, oh, I never thought of it in that way, right? And so, hearing you talk about it, it's really meaningful because I'm like, oh, is that, that's what they meant, right?
It's like deep bilingual.
Yeah. There's a lot of, so some of it was coded on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it was, what I found out was, now this makes me laugh. There's a song called Disco Lady.
Yep.
That I like the song. My mom and them couldn't listen to it when they was little. And I wondered why. And so I had to go in the room and listen to it. And she should have never told me that, because once I listened to it from those years, I was like, oh, no wonder why you couldn't listen to that. That's what it is, I think, Wendy, is once somebody says this is what it is, you can hear it different. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes when you're not, and I love those type of things when they say, that song is about this, and you like, let me go back and listen.
Right.
Yeah, because I didn't know that. And then you go back and listen and say, wow. And Disco Lady is a nice song. I'm not saying nothing against Johnny Taylor. No, it ain't Johnny Taylor. Who made that? Cal, who made Disco Lady? What's his name?
Say it again.
Disco Lady. I said Johnny Taylor. That is Johnny Taylor. Okay, well, it's a nice song, so y'all don't go listen to it and say I said nothing wrong about the song. I just know why my mama's father was a preacher and he wasn't buying it. So that's what it was. But that's a good one, Wendy, though, because a lot of I think that's the communication barriers is when we start having more communications with one another, which is why I love to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
And thanks about the fountain too, because I never saw that until the controversy came up, right? I never ever saw it. I didn't know. No, I didn't either.
Yeah, check. The statue? Yeah, so I'm gonna say, and I'm thank you because I forgot all about this major part. So I got a song called Subject to Review that I did once they did that to me on probation. That's what I did. I made a song, and that was 15 years now. Patrice, my wife, she put me up on this. And so I talk about this at the end of the song. So many people, specifically black men from Kalamazoo, started calling me a prophet after this. It was hilarious because they was like, well, how do you know this? And I was like, no, my wife told me. I didn't know.
She's a prophetess.
Yeah. But this represents, for those who don't know, and you can see it, this represents a white man with the sword in his hand, and there's a Native American who's like at his chest level. He's already either been knocked in the head or getting ready to go in submission role. They boldly said, well, this is where we got it from. This is where we got the land. This is it. It's a reason why places is called Muskegon, Flint, Battle Creek, so on and so forth, but yet you'd be hard pressed to really say, I know a Native American that's from here lineage wise, and this is his great grandson, and I went to school with his uncle. So that's what that represents. Them taking the land and obviously murdering or slaughtering or something destructive because he got that sword in his hand. So yeah, so many people didn't know what that was though, and then that was, to me, that's a representation of where we at, but also a milestone of how far we can go, because now we know. And what they say, if you knew better, you do better. There you go. Yeah, so now we know now. So slip something else up like that. You told out in a minute. That's what they should have graffitied. If this was in the right type of city, that'd have been tagged all up. They'd have had to put wire around that to keep people from doing it. We need more. No, I don't want to say that. But y'all, I think y'all know what I'm saying though. We don't need more destruction, but we do need more healing through resistance, so people actually know we're not allowing stuff like that no more. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
What are you doing, son? That's wild.
No, it's expensive.
Do you? That's good. Absolutely. Yeah, you know Miss Molly? No, okay, y'all met.
Also organized for training.
Oh, okay, no.
Nobody.
Yeah.